This is episode 9 of the Shame Proof Your Life podcast, the one where I talk about the tennis skirt. I'm your host and shame coach, Danita Bremer. In this podcast, I tell stories from my life to fulfill a prompting I've had for far too long. I help you tell your story in a way that you see you aren't alone and there's nothing wrong with you. I want you to stop believing the lie you aren't enough so you can live a life of freedom and fulfillment the way God intended. All right, welcome back. We are at episode 9. How crazy is that? I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I can't actually say I'm enjoying it per se, but I am learning a lot. And every time I hit record, I'm so glad that I did, even though beforehand I'm a little bit dreading it just because it takes some guts to put yourself out in the world like this. Today, I want to start a short series about money shame. This is something that I see in almost 100% of my clients. I haven't verified if for sure 100%, so I don't want to say for sure 100%, but I think 100% of my clients struggle with shame around money, as have I. And our stories about money, I think, really often start in childhood or at least young adulthood. And so today I want to start talking about my experience with tennis and mostly a story about a tennis skirt. So it sounds a little bit ridiculous right now, but bear with me. And I think that you'll see that you probably have something like this in your life that sounds ridiculous. But when we dig in a little bit more, it's just like all the rest of life. It's not really about the tennis skirt, right? It's more about how I was feeling about myself and all the things that I made it mean. So, first of all, I just want to say that as a kid, I didn't really consider myself very much of an athlete. I always wanted to get good grades. So even in elementary school, I participated in PE, even though I was the smallest, scrawniest girl in the class. At least that's what I thought. There were probably smaller, scrawnier girls, but I always thought I was the smallest, scrawniest, weakest girl. So when I hit high school and the spring of my freshman year, I did not think that I was going to be playing any sports, but my friends invited me to play tennis. And I thought, okay, well, if they're doing it and they are encouraging me, they were like, Danita, you should come play. It's so much fun. And it's not really about how good you are. And we're just going to have so much fun together. And I bought into that story. And so I was like, all right. And I kind of looked into it. How much does it cost? Like, what would I actually have to do? And the uniform was a t shirt that the tennis coach would get printed and a pair of shorts. And so, not very high cost. Of course, we did have to get a tennis racket. And so I went to my parents and I said, hey, I think I want to play tennis. And they were like, tennis? What? Because we are not the tennis playing kind of family, if you know what I mean. We're totally not, I don't know. I guess my association is like tennis is kind of a preppy sport. My parents watched pro football every fall into the winter. And my dad liked basketball, but he never watched it on TV. He liked to play a little bit. He claimed that he was good at it and, whatever, as dads do. So they were a little bit surprised that I wanted to play tennis. And I just told them, well, my friends are playing tennis and I don't think it'll cost very much. It doesn't require too much. So I just thought I would give it a shot and I could always quit. Right. And so they were like, oh, okay, yeah, let's find you a tennis racket. So I just kind of let them do that. And one day they came home and they said, hey, we found a tennis racket at a yard sale. It was this old racket, not not wooden. It wasn't that old, but at the time, I actually don't know how old it was. But at the time, I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I'm gonna have, like, the oldest tennis racket. It's heavy. This is gonna be so hard. I'm gonna look ridiculous." But apparently, none of that really was too big of an obstacle for me to tell my friends, "No, I'm not playing." So, off I went playing tennis, with my old racket, my normal pair of shorts, the t-shirt that we got every year. I think we got a new t-shirt every year, and just learning and having fun. And you guys, I was terrible. I was seriously really horrible at tennis. And the reason is because I was so much of a perfectionist. Remember, I was the straight A student, and I thought I had to be perfect in order for people to like me and to be valuable and to get what I wanted out of life. So I took that whole mindset and I brought it with me to playing tennis. And I thought I had to be perfect in playing tennis. So I would lob the balls. I never would have like a direct hit, right? It was just lob, lob. Now I look back on it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that is so embarrassing. Why did my friends not tell me?" They probably did, honestly, and I probably was too scared to mess up. Why did my tennis coach not push me to, like, stop lobbing the ball? He probably did. He actually was a really nice, gentle guy, so it's possible he didn't, but he probably actually did. And I did have fun, but I was really quite terrible at tennis the first 2 years. Kind of beside the point, but gives you a little bit of background. So one day, I think this was right at the beginning of the tennis season my sophomore year, because I don't think I was driving yet, so I think I was still 15, and I went to my parents and I asked them if they would buy me a tennis skirt. Now, here is the reason as I look back, I think. I could be a little wrong. I could be a little off, but this is how I remember it. When you're playing tennis and you don't have pockets, which girls' pockets in shorts, even athletic shorts, are very small. They do not fit a tennis ball most of the time. So you either have to go chase the balls, or if you're one of the lucky ones who has this cool tennis skirt, there's a little ball pocket in the skirt. So, my thinking was like, I don't want to have to chase the balls. And my hands are really small. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this. And so I couldn't hold two balls in one hand. So I'd have to like put a ball down on the ground, serve one ball and or chase the balls all over the place, maybe even risk tripping over balls. And so my thought was like, "Oh, I want a tennis skirt so that I can just put the balls in my skirt in the ball pocket, not have to chase them all over the place, and bonus, I'll look cute." Right? And so I have no idea as a 15-year-old girl living in this middle of nowhere town how much a tennis skirt costs. It's logical that it wouldn't cost that much, right? I mean, I've got shorts, I've got pants, I've got shirts. Couldn't cost that much. And so I remember my mom being a little hesitant when I first asked, but she was like, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. Now, like I said, small town, middle of nowhere, there is nowhere to buy a tennis skirt in this town I grew up in, or at least this is my impression because we ended up driving 3 hours to Wenatchee, Washington. And I don't know if the purpose of going to Wenatchee was the tennis skirt or if there was another purpose and it was like, "Oh, we're gonna be there, let's look for a tennis skirt also." I kinda think maybe the purpose was the tennis skirt, which now I look back and I'm like, "Well, that was kinda ridiculous." My parents should have just said, "No, you can't have a tennis skirt." But anyway, So we're on this road trip, basically going there was a town, a little bit bigger town about 45 minutes away, but I think they probably also didn't have tennis skirts, or I don't know, maybe they were out, maybe it was a different time of year, I don't know. We ended up going to Wenatchee, 3-hour drive away, and we were, like, shopping, trying all these different stores. Like, we didn't know where to buy a tennis skirt. We didn't know, like, about, like, the specialty stores or whatever, and so my parents end up getting into this giant fight about me wanting a tennis skirt. And I don't remember the details of the fight, but if it was like any other fight that they had a million times while I was growing up, it was probably that my mom wanted to give me what I wanted. Like I was a good kid and, I didn't get into trouble. And it's not that much to ask for a tennis skirt. Like they got me a $5 tennis racket, right? And my dad probably thought it was ridiculous and it was too expensive. If my memory serves correctly, and it's entirely possible that it doesn't, I think the skirt was like 25 or $35. So probably not super cheap, but also not ridiculous, right? Like, at least right now, I think it's not super ridiculous. Probably more than what they wanted to pay. Totally beside the point again. I wanted the skirt. I had 0 idea how big of a deal this was gonna be, and, like, we're, 3 hours away from home. We finally find a tennis skirt, and my parents are fighting about how much it costs and whether or not I should have it, and I just feel so horrible. I just wanna, like, give the skirt back, tell them, like, "I don't want it that much," crawl into a hole, and never come back out, right? And I don't know, I just remember this being such a big deal. And now as I look back on it, there were a couple things. I think the first thing is that it's totally normal and natural for a teenager to want to look cute and like fit in with her peers, right? And my guess is that my mom could relate to that. My dad, I don't think he ever cared about fitting in with anyone anywhere. But the cost of me wanting this tennis skirt and causing this giant fight between my parents was that I thought that I was the cause of their negative emotions and I shouldn't be. And it kind of was at a cost of me not fitting into my family, right? Like me being the disruptor of the peace and harmony in the family, if there was such a thing, which in my mind there was. Like, I totally thought I was causing this fight and I shouldn't want this tennis skirt. I should have researched it more. I should have taken more responsibility. My parents are fighting now and I'm the cause of it and I shouldn't be. So, like I said earlier, it really isn't about the tennis skirt, right? It was more about the reason why I remember this so much and the reason why I put it under the category of money shame is it was more about wanting something that quote unquote cost too much, right? And that I sort of internalized this message that I shouldn't want things that cost too much. I shouldn't cause my parents to fight, or like I shouldn't even be the spark of their disagreements. I'm wondering if this relates to any of you in your life. I'm guessing it does, but it probably isn't about a tennis skirt. I hear so often in my clients and just in the world, people feeling bad about the things they want, feeling bad about their own desires. I think this could be one of the core messages that causes our shame, which is I have a desire. Totally doesn't matter what your desire is about. In this story, my desire was about a tennis skirt. But for you, it could be about, I don't know, wanting to hire a house cleaner or wanting to go back to school or wanting the latest iPhone or whatever, right? Whatever thing it is that you're wanting, if you have this story in your mind or this rule in your mind that you shouldn't want things that are too expensive, then that may cause shame. It may not, like it's not like a for sure thing, but if you feel a lot of shame around spending money, if you have this rule in your mind that spending money is not as good as saving money, and then you want something that costs money, you might find yourself feeling shame about this, as I did as a 15-year-old girl. The other thing I notice is this whole fitting in, right? Like, why did I even want the tennis skirt? I believed it would make my life a little bit easier. And I believed that it would make me look a certain way to help me fit in. Now, is that wrong to want to fit in? No. Is it worth, certain amounts of money or fighting over or whatever? You get to decide that. But what I noticed as I was thinking back about this story was that wanting to fit in with my peers, my friends, was put at odds with wanting to fit in my family. And that, my friends, is a no-win situation. If it's like either I fit in with my peers or I fit in with my family, how do you make that choice? Lots of teenagers choose to fit in with their peers. Lots probably choose to fit in with their families. It's just a choice that we all have to make. But it's it almost is like it tells us that we no matter what choice we make, we don't fit in, right? And the last thing I wanted to point out was that we need to be really conscious of the parentheses around our thoughts. So, one of my thoughts that really caused me to feel shame in this situation was I'm causing my parents negative emotion. And the parentheses, what comes after that in parentheses is, and I shouldn't, right? So if I had this thought, I cause my parents negative emotion, and what came after it was, and good for them, they deserve it, then I wouldn't be feeling shame, right? But my parentheses is always, and I shouldn't, right? I want a tennis skirt, and I shouldn't. I whatever, and I shouldn't. So just really be aware of what comes after your main thought. Is it, and I shouldn't, and I should, or, and they shouldn't, and they should? Like, should is a huge red flag because basically what shoulds and shouldn'ts tell us is that we should be different. We're not the way, I even hesitate to use the word should here, but like, we aren't how we want to be, basically, right? And we like, when we say should or shouldn't, it's like it's out of our control, it's outside of us, because if we should and we are, then we have control over that. But anytime you hear yourself, "And I should," or "And I shouldn't," it sort of insinuates that it's outside of you. Right? Not always. Sometimes we can stand back and think, oh, I don't like this. I don't want to be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. And then we just change it. Right. But it doesn't cause this big story in our minds. So anytime like you're aware of this parentheses, and I shouldn't, or and I should, and it's causing a big story in your mind or like intense emotion, then it's a sign that you're believing that whatever the should or shouldn't is outside of your control. And that is totally disempowering. Okay. So, what choices do you have to make about fitting in? Or are you telling yourself, no matter what choice I make, I don't fit in? Are you telling yourself that your desires are bad? And be aware of the parentheses, be aware of the follow up thought attached to the main thought, right? And this kind of goes back to one of the earlier episodes. I don't remember what number it was, number 2 or 3, where we talked about your thoughts create your feelings, but your thoughts don't create other people's feelings. their thoughts do. Now, as a teenager, I totally bought into the story that my desire, which is my feeling or my action asking for a tennis skirt, created my parents' feelings. And that's just totally false. It's totally disempowering to me because then I want to change them or I want to change myself and I can't. And it just causes this whole cycle. Okay, that's enough for now. And so are you. Until next time, go be you and follow the spirit. If you resonate with my story, I would love to connect with you. If you resonate with my story, I'd love to connect with you. Find me on Instagram and Facebook at Danita Brummer Coaching. And if you're interested in taking the tips and tools I offer here deeper, please visit my website at danitabrummer.com and schedule a free session.